Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Mark My Words. And this is the podcast where I bring on a guest in the entrepreneurial world and we talk about their path and we talk about life and we meet at the crossroads somewhere and talk about where things changed and how they became an entrepreneur. And today, I feel like I have a very good representation of the entrepreneurial world on this show. He specializes in accountability, but he does so much more. He's an entrepreneur, sales and marketing executive, a Forbes contributor, and runs his own business coaching firm. He is an award winning entrepreneur. He was named Utah Business Magazine's top 40 under 40 a couple years ago. I could probably go on and on and on about Don Markland. Welcome to Mark My Words. It's great to have you here on the show. How you doing?
Man, I'm so good. Mark, thank you for having me on. And before we even get anything, I wanted to just say how much I love your show, your voice, and the voice you provide people. I I think about when I started my first business and I was a co-owner of this company. We didn't have podcasts back in 2012, 2013. Like when we were trying to figure out what to do, we were going, we were reading some books, looking some stuff online, talking to people. And if we had had resources like this, it would have sped up or at least helped us not make as many mistakes. So thank you for what you're doing. I think it's a great platform and you do a great job.
Well, I really appreciate that considering I woke up early just to have this conversation with you, to hear those words. And it was enough to have you on the show, but to hear all those kind words just makes it even more worth it. And when I think about 2012, and I know in my gut, I wanted to do something a little more for myself, but didn't know what to do or how to do it. And frankly, I don't even think I knew what the heck I was doing other than my actual career.
That's
so,
right. Yeah. Well, good for
so
you. Look, that's the start of all entrepreneurship is understanding that even though you might not have an idea or you might not have a business plan, you're a brand as a person and you have value in your own unique way and you owe it to your family to express it and do something with it that makes a difference.
that's so true. And I think a lot of people don't think about the fact that even if they're not an entrepreneur, they're still a brand and they're still representing something. And I really have started to learn that over the past 5 years. You talk about the crossroads, I talk about my own crossroads in bits and pieces a lot on this show. And I think the crossroads for me was 5 years ago. That's when I really started thinking about my life more. But I don't necessarily want to take up all your time talking about my life. Let's talk about your life a little bit
Sure.
because you have had quite the resume. I feel like I've had a lot of jobs and I probably still have more jobs than you. It's all stuff I haven't posted or wouldn't post on LinkedIn because I've worked in like a woodworking factory, all stuff I did even before I graduated college. But you have a really interesting resume as I look at your LinkedIn. First of all, you majored in English literature and then transitioned to business. How did that come about?
Well, it actually was even a little step before that. When I first got into college, I was a full scholarship student in vocal performance and musical theater. Right, so I thought I was going to be the next great Broadway star. That was my dream and my passion when I was going to Utah Valley State College. It's now UVU in Orem, Utah, and I put a lot into theater and a lot into that type of work, only to realize in a very humbling way that I wasn't as good as I thought I was, right? I was good enough for a state college and good enough for scholarships and I was really good. And then I did some national tour auditions and got all the way down to like the final two callbacks for Beauty and the Beast, the national tour. And I got to see what world class Broadway talent was like versus where I was at. And I saw and realized I'm going to have to put in so much more work just to get up to par. And that's when I realized this is maybe something I want to adjust. So I switched to my other passion, which was literature. And I loved British literature and English literature, and I spent a long time with that. But then my beautiful wife, who's amazing, she reminded me that we're going to need to have a family, and we're going to want to support and do these things. What are you going to do? Reading Charles Dickens every day. And so I realized, look, I have a personality that I can sell a little bit. I like talking to people. I'd already done some things in my career early on. So I switched to business finance because I knew I could sell, but if I understood the financial mechanisms of business, then I knew I could be really effective. And so that's what I did.
Interesting. And coming into that with the background and the passions that you had, did you feel like you had the mathematical foundation to be in the business world, or is that something you just put in the work and were able to make that transition because you're
Um,
smart?
yeah, the good question. Math was not my strong suit, right? Understanding math and calculus and statistics was not my strong suit, but it's something that I teach a lot of my coaching practice as well, is that skill and discipline beats talent every time. And I did not have particular talent in how to do statistical analysis or regression analysis or understand that. I couldn't do a spreadsheet to save my life. But then as I got my degree in that, as I later on got my MBA in international business and took higher level statistics classes, I started to drill it and practice it over and over and over until now I can do it fairly quickly.
Wow, that is amazing because I know that one thing from listening to your podcast, which I also forgot to mention, The Morning Jolt is Don Markland's podcast. It's awesome. Listen to that, look it up as well. I was listening to said podcast. You talked a lot about putting in the work in, I think, the donkey episode, and which was great. And I know that I put in a ton of work as far as trying to learn math because I had a situation where I was getting told, well, you need to get a business degree and you're not going to be able to make a career out of whatever you're trying to do, which was broadcasting. And I actually made an attempt to major in business, a very short foray into business.
Mm.
I put in the work, and I mean, I never took calculus. I barely even passed geometry, so I did not have the foundation for math. Just for whatever reason, with all the work I put in, it just was not my thing, and I wound up deciding after a while that okay, I just cannot do this because if I would have majored in business, either I'd still be majoring in business today and still in college and failing, or I would be working in that woodworking factory. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that I found out that just was not for me at all.
Well, and I'll tell you something about skill development that's important is that I mean, not everybody's destined to be a world-class Olympian, okay? But anybody can learn a skill and become good at it. Their MIT did a study, this a number of years ago, but they looked at the number of hours it takes to complete an MBA. And then they compared that to people that were willing to read a certain number of books on a subject. And they found if you read, because you think about the time it takes to read a full cover to cover regular nonfiction book, if you read 21 books on one particular subject, it is the equivalent as far as knowledge obtainment as an MBA. And so, what happened to me a little time in my career, my background at first was only sales. I just was a guy, could do sales processes, sales on the phone, sales door to door. I was just a sales guy. And then as my career continued to develop, I had some people say, "Hey, can you run this marketing group? Can you do this? Can you do this?" And I come from the principle of everything's always figure outable. So always say yes and we'll find a way. And so I found myself starting to run these large marketing organizations, but I knew nothing about digital marketing, AdWords strategy, landing page design, email marketing. I knew nothing. So I made a list of 21 of the best digital marketing books and I read them. And I read about 60 to 80 books a year. So I sat and I just read and read and read and read and read. And once I got through all that, I mean, I knew more about marketing than most people that have been in it for 20 years, even to the point where I made a bid at a conference and they asked me to come speak on digital marketing. And I went and spoke. I talked about digital marketing and the trends of the year and all these things. And somebody afterward was like, "Oh, you were so insightful. How long have you been doing digital marketing?" And I said, "Oh, about 6 months." Right? 6 months. And I go, "But it's just because you take the time to study, read, and apply."
And that to me defines, I think, what you were trying to say about putting in the work, because you truly put in the work to become somebody of expertise in all those areas. And I know when I first started on the, I would consider the second chapter of my professional career, and I left my job in 10 years, I wound up wanting to study up on social media, podcasting, and I worked, at least in my mind, I worked really hard, read up, and put in all that work. And it almost makes you feel like, okay, I didn't go to school for this or anything like that, but I feel like I'm an expert now. I feel like I know
Yeah,
so much. And it's like you kind of, at least I did, I know, I was like, I want to say I'm an expert, but it's like it felt so easy. I know I put in the work, but that's what you just said. That's exactly what you gotta do in this day and age if you want to make those transitions and if you want to progress in your career.
that's right. You just gotta you gotta, there's a great quote that I've used a lot. It's by an actor named Will Smith. It's mentioned a lot where he said, he goes, "Look, I might have somebody else get a part over me because they were better looking than I am, they were sexier than I am, they were better fit or something. But if it comes down to who's willing to work harder," he goes, "I have a philosophy that I will die on the treadmill." And they go, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, dying on the treadmill means if I'm in a work competition on a treadmill, me against somebody else, one of two things are going to happen. Either they're getting off first or I'm going to die on that treadmill." And that's the philosophy of work hard. You've got to be relentless at your ability to put in the work and win.
And it's interesting that whole quote and everything you just said. I feel like as you were saying all that, I look back on my life and I feel like that to a large degree applies to me. And for me, it's a little bit different because I was born with obstacles that kind of made me a little different with the cleft lip and palate. I think there's a couple different roads that we can all go down just as people, but I think when you have obstacles like I do, there's a couple different ways you can go. You can sit back a little bit more and not want to be seen or heard. And it was instilled in me from an early age by my mom to really try to like go out there and prove myself. And she was the type of parent that would wake me up at 5 in the morning to she would go to those teacher shops and buy all those teacher books on English and phonics, and she would drive me out of bed to make me go over all of that so that I could articulate and be smart and not, jumble over words or not, just to appear smart, which hopefully I just am smart, not just appearing smart. But
Right.
she instilled that, and I have carried that with me my entire life, where anytime I feel like somebody has doubts, and even into adulthood, there have been plenty of people who, even if they don't say it, if you're somebody like me, you can feel it. And you can feel if somebody has doubts or they're not sure of you. And it just makes me want to work harder. Just like the treadmill analogy there. It's just, I'll fall over and kill over on the treadmill or the elliptical, working hard just to prove something. And not only just to prove, that's a whole nother topic. I've kind of gotten over proving to people so much. But as far as working hard and getting to where I want to be, those values have really been instilled in me. And it's something I've carried with me.
I love that. What's your mother's first name?
Millie.
Millie. So
Yeah.
I love what Millie did. And I don't know how much she listens to your show. She's like my mom. She doesn't listen to my shows at all. But Millie is an inspiration, right? Because you look at who you are, you look at your career, you look at your podcast, you look at everything. That's the value of parenting. There's a quote that I use all the time by a guy named David O. McKay, where he said, "No success outside the home justifies failure inside the home." Right. And too many times, especially entrepreneurs, think, well, I can't work, spend time with my kids, or I can't raise them, or I can't do this because I got to build my career. I got to build my empire. No success outside the home justifies failure inside the home ever. And the fact that Millie was willing to put in all that extra time and all that extra work, look at the legacy. Look at the legacy that it's had on the world, because she was willing to say, my son, who's got some challenges that are visible, everybody has challenges. Yours happen to be visible, that you could see and everybody else could see and judge off of. And she said, I refuse to let this be a deterrent. I'm going to be an incredible mother and do whatever it takes to make my son have his best shot at life. That's inspiring. That is entrepreneurship. Even though she didn't get a transactional relationship from it, right? She wasn't off making millions of dollars from an e-com store. It was still entrepreneurship mentality of, I'm going to find a way, I'm going to find solutions, I'm going to bootstrap it, I'm going to figure it out, and ain't nobody going to stop me. And that is awesome. I hope one day to talk to Millie and just tell her how awesome I think she did with you, and what an inspiration she is.
Well, speaking of inspiration and working hard, let's talk a little bit about your actual path. So, you got out of college and you did like a lot of stuff. You were a piano performer, you were a trainer, you were a professor. I feel like you and I, in some ways, you're like the I would almost say the white collar version of me. I mean, not that you don't have blue collar values
I
in you, because you
Yeah,
do,
no.
but
Yeah, but I was not a manual labor person. That's okay. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
you got to talk over you. Apologies, but
No, you're okay.
you're like the white collar version of me, because I worked in like retail. I'm talking like Best Buy, stocking stores at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I did the woodworking, I did sales, like furniture sales. Whereas you tried a little bit of everything, but on another level. So what kind of like led to that? Was that organic, or were you like trying to find something within you? What were you doing with all the different awesome paths that you tried out?
Well, I did, and it's not all on my resume, but when I was in college, as a musical theater major, I was a day laborer for a temp company. And so I did, I don't know how many jobs, working at a paper factory, working janitorial work, stocking, cleaning work, road cleaning work. I mean, I did the most miserable, tough, difficult work, because that's all I could find while I was going to college. So I did that for a long time. And then as I started to get through college and find a love for sales and for business, I moved into a sales role and with a company, and I worked my way up there. I was on the phones for about 2 weeks before there was a management opening position. And so I applied, and everybody around me was like, Don, you shouldn't apply. You've only been here 2 weeks. That's crazy. And I said, you don't know me. right? I'm going to do whatever I want. So I go apply for this management job. And I went and met with my boss. Her name was Kim Clegg. And I showed her a little presentation of why I was going to be the best supervisor in the history of the company, in the history of the world. And I couldn't believe it. I got the job. And and I was making 6.25 an hour. That's what my rate was as the manager. It was amazing. And I kept doing that. I did that for about 5, 6 months until an assistant call center manager position. This would have been the number 2 person in the facility. And I applied for it again and again. Everybody told me, Don, you're crazy. That's nuts. Like you're too young. You're 20. This is crazy. And I said, you don't know me. I'm going to do whatever I want. So I met with Kim Clegg again, showed her a presentation of why I was going to be the best assistant call center manager in the history of the company, in the history of the world. And holy cow, I got the job. And now I was making 10.25 an hour, and I was the number, her right hand person. And I busted it hard. I worked at it and worked at it. And then, as fortunate would have it, about another 6 months later, they had an actual branch manager position open up in Yakima, Washington. I was living in Utah. So what Yakima, Washington might as well have been Egypt. It was so far away. But I applied for it. And again, everybody was telling me, Don, you're crazy. You're like barely 21 years old. Like, I mean, how in the world are you going to get this job? That's nuts. You're never going to get it. And I said, you don't know me. And I went and met with the VP of operations at the time. His name's Greg. And I'm still very close to Greg, and showed him why I'd be the best branch manager in the history of the company, in the history of the world. And sure enough, I got the job, and they moved me to Washington. And here I was, this 20-year-old kid running a call center operation out of Yakima, Washington. And within 3 months, we were the number 1 running facility in the whole company. We were killing it. And that's when they made me a trainer, and I started traveling around the country and doing that and being successful. From there, I moved to a different organization, Focus, where I was a director, and eventually within 3 years, I was the vice president of operations, and ran. Now all of a sudden I had 1,500 employees all over the world, and I was launching businesses in El Salvador, India, the Philippines, all on the same ambition of, if somebody says no, I was like, you don't know me. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to find a way. And that's why I was, I did some teaching in college and things like that. And I did little things, but it was the ambition to make a difference and an impact. And when somebody said, no, you can't, I dug in and went after it. And it was important. And it was when I was at that company, when I really hit my crossroads of where I needed to change my life. And that's where that occurred.
And how did you feel that you needed to change your life at that point? You were doing so great. I don't know if being an entrepreneur was at the front of your mind, but what exactly was going on that made you want to change gears?
Well, here I was in my mid 20s, right? I was about 25 years old. I was about 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was traveling all the time. I was traveling 24 times a year. Now, look, in a lot of ways, I was very successful. I had a good mid 6 figure salary. My beautiful wife, I had 3 kids. Things were going really well. But inside, I was overwhelmed, overworked, overstressed, right? And I didn't realize it. And so one day I was in a training room in Rock Falls, Illinois. I just finished a big long training with a few hundred people, and I was eating dinner, which was my favorite restaurant at the time, which was Taco Bell. I don't know if you know that fine establishment, okay, but I was throwing back a chalupa, which is so good. And I remember thinking, this can't be what my life's about. This can't be. There's got to be a better way. And I thought about a quote from a guy named Bob Proctor, where he said, accountability is the glue that ties commitment to results. And that struck me. And I thought, let me think about this. I need to have better accountability in my life. And I created my own personal program called the 4 C's of accountability. It was mine, just for me, not for anybody else. And as I started to live that 4 C's, my life got better. I lost all the weight. I started to see my family more, and my wife liked the thinner me, which was a nice win, right? And everything started to succeed. I started to teach it to my team and tell them they had to run it. And as they lived the 4 C's, everything started to get better. That business grew from 15 to 25 million up to 45 million, and it was incredible. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a genius. I started to get this big head, right? I'm a superstar genius. And then is the way the world works, and this is always what happens. At that moment, that's when my wife got diagnosed with cancer,
Oh no.
and she's fine now, right? I'll make sure everybody knows that. But she got diagnosed, and it was shocking because here we had 3 kids under the age of 6. I just started to get success. Like I lost weight, got my program, got everything going, business is growing, and my wife gets cancer. I couldn't believe it. And the next 2 years was tough. Her surgeries, radiation, all this kind of stuff. It was brutal. And what got us through it is accountability, knowing what we're going to do, the glue that ties commitment to results, the 4 C's. And as we got through that, I remember telling her, I wouldn't wish these 2 years on my worst enemy. And at the same time, I wish everybody could taste this. Everybody could, because after going through this, I'm a better manager, leader, executive, husband, father, son, you name it. And it was through that is when I decided, I was meeting with that company and they were talking about possibly naming me president. We realized, I don't know if we want to do that. Let's try something that's a little more on our own. And I left that company, even though I'd been there 10 years, had an equity play, had a pathway to owner, the president, all these things. We walked away from it all to chase some dreams. And I joined a small little startup as employee number 5 and was an owner and chief operating officer. And I went down the path.
Wow. I feel like if I knew I was on the path to become president of a company, that would be a very hard decision. How hard was that for you?
It was for the until we made the decision, it was a wrestle. We're religious and we believe in faith, and we did a lot of prayer and contemplation and meditation on it. And we both realized that every once and you've had this in your life, Mark, where your brain says do this, but your heart says do this, and it doesn't make any sense, right? And you've just got to have faith. You just got to have faith to step into the dark. And look, faith doesn't mean blind faith that I do it without preparation, right? I explored opportunities. I found what was out there. I did the research, and then we stepped out into the dark. And we knew it wasn't easy, right? The first, I'll share this dumb little silly story with you. But when I joined that business, 90 days into it, we were negative 10,000 run rate. It was horrible. We were losing money. I was losing money. And I remember one day I called my wife on my way home. I had an hour and a half commute. And I said, this is awful. This is miserable. I should have never left that company, right? Where it was super successful. I had a secretary, I had all these things. Now I'm losing money. I'm losing our money. The business is failing. What do I do? And she said, are you done whining? And I said, yes. And she said, good. I'm sick of hearing it. You've been calling me for weeks complaining and it's getting exhausting. From now on, only call me when you're going to talk about the solutions. Otherwise, you are the problem. Because lucky for you, I didn't marry a loser. And she said, from now on, only to call me when you're going to talk about the 4 C's. And then she hung up the phone, just slammed it. And it changed my life because that's when she taught me the value of coaching. I did not call her every day because I didn't have good things to say every day, right? But most days I would call her. I'd bring up solutions. She'd push back. She'd help me think through it, push back, and help me find solutions. And that's when I realized there's value in coaching. It was shortly after there, I got my own personal coach, and I've had a coach ever since. And my business grew. That negative 10,000 business, we got it up to 1.5 million before we sold it, and it did well. And I've applied now those same principles everywhere I've gone since then, and I owe it all to her.
That is amazing. And I really like the idea of just, her not saying, oh, just be more positive or just be this. Actually find the solution, take the action. And sometimes that's the hardest thing for people to do is to take the action because it doesn't really take a whole lot to just be positive. I can be positive, but if I really want results, I have to find the solution to the
That's
problem. And
right. Yeah.
I think that was a really great way of thinking. And I think that would have motivated me too. So good job for her.
Yeah. She's amazing. She's the best. She's the best I've ever known. Best woman on earth.
Fair enough. Well, for one thing, so you're the second podcast that I've done this week. And the one thing that you and Jessica, my other guest earlier this week, have in common is that you're keying in on one word that your whole, what, not just what your business is about, but what you're about. And I'm curious to know, is that something that happened by accident? Or, I mean, I know you kind of told the story already, but keying in on that one word, is that something that you knew you had to do to kind of build a foundation? Or,
It did. Yeah. I had tried a lot of different personal development programs, courses, read countless books, all these things, and nothing seemed to stick until I started to understand what accountability really was. And so many times people confuse accountability. They think accountability is negative, right? Did you hold that guy accountable? Right? Did you hold him accountable? Did you hold your team accountable? Right? And it always has this connotation of negative consequence. And that is not the case. Accountability is the glue that ties commitment to results. It's always positive, always. And even if you make a mistake, we're going to hold you accountable. But if you're going to win, we're going to hold you accountable. You're going to be accountable for every decision you make in your life. Nothing happens to you, you only make it happen. And when you start down that path and understand that and apply the 4 C's, you become lethal in your life. It's amazing what you can accomplish and do and succeed with when you truly understand how accountability works.
well, with that being said, and I wish more people would think like that, because I know that's without even knowing it and researching the 4 C's and what accountability is about to you, at least from what I'm reading, it makes me realize that, I feel like in a lot of ways it kind of lines up with how I try to live my life and think, because I I'm one of those people, and I think you said it somewhere in your podcast, emotionally disconnecting from things is something that, because of how my life has turned out and my path, I'm really good at just emotionally disconnecting. And I know that that's something that you emphasize in the, I keep calling it the donkey episode of your podcast.
Yeah.
And is that something that kind of like goes hand in hand with accountability, as far as like just being able to hold yourself accountable and to be able to see things through the right lens so you can
Yeah.
progress?
Well, you're bringing up a great point of all decision making is based on emotion. And that's where people kind of get confused. They think, well, I need to have logic. I need to know this makes sense. That's not true. That logic gives you an emotional response of security. That it's always based on emotion. And so we are emotional people, emotional beings. And if you can understand how your emotion works, how to influence the way your emotion works, and tie that to productive behavior, it becomes unbelievable what you can do. Right. So it isn't just about, like I talked about in the Donkey episode, working hard and just working. Right. It's about working the right way. It's about tying your emotions to the right incentives in your life so that you take care of it. Right. And that you prioritize yourself, you prioritize everyone around you, and you become successful that way.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And just from living the life I've lived, it's amazing. I feel like I'm a very successful person in my own way, and I see the kind of success you've had, and I see all these things you're saying. I look at your path. I'm like, boy, me and Don are pretty similar in a lot of ways, and I mean, now it's inspiring for me because I'm like, okay, I know if I want to take my own life to the next level or two, which is something I'm putting the work in for, and I see how similar we are. It's like, okay, not that everybody has to be like God, but
Yeah. My wife would say, please, no, please, no. Yeah. There's one too many. Yeah.
but I see the similarities, and I'm like, this is inspiring just for me,
Good.
just seeing the similarities. So that's pretty cool for me to see, even as we continue the discussion, which if you want to, I know you want to encourage people to read your book and everything else, but I've got the 4 C's of accountability in front of me if you want to talk a little
Yeah,
bit about those.
I'm happy to. I love talking about it. Okay. And every one of your listeners can go to my website, accountabilitynow.net. They can get their own free ebook copy, or they can go to Amazon and buy a copy, either or. So the 4 C's, it starts with 2 rules, and then there are 4 C's underneath it. The first 2 rules, the first rule is accountability always starts with me. So I can't go into a room, I can't go into an environment and think, it's your fault. I have to look at myself first. I just this morning, I was having a coaching call with a client of mine from India. And I was talking to her about a situation she's having with her investment firm. And as we were discussing it, I was saying, remember, the frustrated partners, they're frustrated at your actions. Your actions are causing it. How can you fix it? How can you change it? Don't be mad at them. Be mad at yourself. Look at yourself first. And we had a kind of an eye-opening session, right? So accountability starts with yourself. The second thing is there are no egos in accountability, right? Anybody can hold you accountable. I'll give you an example. I teach this in a metaphor. You take the sport of baseball. If I throw a pitch and you swing and you miss, that is a strike. Mark got a strike. And it doesn't matter if call it a strike, or the umpire calls it a strike, or an opposing player calls it a strike. Heck, if a fan in the stands calls it a strike, it doesn't matter. A strike is still a strike. But so many times we get our feelings hurt, we get frustrated when people call out our flaws, and we get just upset and we start to attack back and say, "You're being a hypocrite. You do it too. And you're so bad." Why are we wasting that energy? Who cares? You still missed, right? It was a strike. That's all that matters. So be thankful, drop the ego, and get better. That's important. Secondly, now we go into the 4 C's, which are really easy at this point. First C is critique success. Do it better every time, no matter what. Do it better every time. If I don't care how good you've done, if you have a great podcast like you do, right? Mark my words, right? You look at it and you try to get better every time. Don't rest on your laurels. Critique your success. Surround yourself with people that'll tell you the truth and make things better. Second is correct failure. I want more mistakes. I want more podcast episodes with problems in it. I want more guests that don't show up, right? Because that means you're trying, that means you're pushing, that means you're figuring things out. More mistakes. We don't punish mistakes with my business. We correct them and get better. Third, celebrate growth. The hardest thing in this life to do is grow. That is the hardest thing, not succeed, it's grow. You and I were sent here by our God to be successful. That was our expectation. So don't celebrate meeting expectations. Celebrate choosing hard things. If you go to the gym and you're bench pressing, the hardest rep, the most one that's most important, is the last one. That's when the muscles rip. That's when the lactic acid goes in. That's when you get stronger. Celebrate growth over success. And the last thing is we crush mediocrity, right? Every one of us have mediocrity. You have it. I have it. We have vices. We have things that pull us back. We shirk. We get lazy. All those things. And when you see it, you treat it like you would a big bug in your house. You crush it with everything you've got. When you do that, you live those 4 C's and apply the 2 rules. Forget about it, man. You're crazy. It's nuts how good you are.
Wow. And when you rattle everything off like that, it's like, where do I begin? So, first of all, your 2 rules, I mean, and this hopefully isn't going to come off like I'm critiquing. Like, this is really great. Like, this is such a great foundation. Hopefully, what I'm going to say is more of how I'm relating to
Yeah.
everything, which, I mean, obviously, as we talked about earlier with accountability starting with you, that's something that I really can relate to. And now your second role is something that I think is probably a challenge for a lot of people because to separate that emotion, you got a strike and maybe you felt like it was out of the strike zone
Yeah.
and they still call it a strike. Well, I guess if you're at the professional level, you can argue it if you want, but most of us are not professional baseball players. So I mean, you can't, like, if you start arguing it and you're in the middle of an at bat and you're getting emotional, you're not going to accomplish your goal, which is getting a hit, or perhaps if you're real good, getting a home run, which I was never that good. I don't think unless I was playing with my buddies, I never hit a home run in a real game. But, but I mean, the ultimate goal is to at least get on base and get a hit or draw a walk. And I think a lot of people don't think about that when they're getting all emotional about the issue. It's just one strike. Move on from it. Separate yourself from it. It's in the past, and you gotta move forward. And I think sometimes people dwell in the past and don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's really into the second C, right? Where we correct failure, right? Look, who cares if you make mistakes? Okay. Fix it. Fix it and roll, right? You're going to make mistakes. So make a change and move forward.
And I think that was one of the hardest lessons in life that I had to learn, because I've had so many things going on in my world, so many ups and downs. And when I've had those downs, I would dwell on it and be like, man, how could I have done it differently? Or if this would have happened differently, my life would have turned out differently. And I don't really think like that anymore. I mean, I like to reflect and, say, oh, that would have been interesting, but I don't dwell like that anymore. And I don't really know why I stopped doing that. I guess I just, to your point about energy, I just felt like it was a waste of energy.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good foundation. Celebrating growth and just celebrating your victories in general, I think is probably still one of the hardest for me, because, again, with all the ups and downs in life, it's like you almost are waiting for the other shoe to drop when you have success. And as I've gotten older and have grown, I've come to realize that life is too short to not celebrate your victories a little bit. And if you're putting in the work and you're getting the results, then you need to take time to celebrate.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And then, I mean, I could go on all day. I mean, these are just really great. Critiquing success, correct failure, crush mediocrity, which I love. You're just not, you know, moving above mediocrity. You're crushing it down.
That's right.
And I love that. So this to me is like really inspiring and a really great foundation, not only for you, but for those who seek your coaching. And just coming off of that, what type of clients do you tend to have or look for your coaching?
I work with small businesses between 0 and 10 million. I call it napkin to 10. Anybody from a napkin to 10 million. Through my coaching, we help them build their sales and marketing and executive practice to be successful.
That is awesome. Is there any type of client that you enjoy working with the most?
I look, sales and marketing is my background, and so I really like clients that have a sales and marketing need, right? Like, hey, we're trying to ramp this up, we're trying to grow this, or we're trying to do these things. Those are the ones that get the highest level of engagement, and we actually get the most movement up quickest.
Awesome. So, what's next for you? What's next for accountability now? What are some of your goals moving forward?
Accountability now, we currently work with 17 clients in 7 countries. The practice is doing really well. We're in industries from robotic automation to pest control sales to fence installation sales to nutraceutical and supplements. It's doing really well. And we're on the process of doing a few more things that'll help probably double size the business over the next 2 years. For anybody that's on your listen to your practice that's a coach, because you're going to have a lot of people that are coaches out there. We've had now for the last year a coaching roundtable, group coaching. It's not a gimmicky thing where there's promising appointments and stuff. We actually have a group of close to 100 coaches that attend every single week, and we go through how to improve, grow your practice, how to scale. They get real group coaching with me on building their practice. It's amazing how many people come into this piece and start to really do well, right? We've had just recently one of the coaches in the academy. He came on. He's never ever had 10 clients actively at one time, and he closed 6 clients in his first month, and now he's over the 10 threshold. So it's a pretty cool program, and I'm expecting us to get to 250 or 300 coaches over the next year.
Wow, that's really amazing. I mean, maybe on the surface that might not sound like a lot, but that's like 250, 300 coaches. That's actually like a lot. That's
Yeah.
when I think about just putting individuals in a room, it's like, wow, that's really good. That's really amazing. And I mean, I think what you're doing is really cool and really incredible. And I'm using all these words, exciting words here, but I mean, it's really great. I feel like the foundation that you've set and have built is going to benefit so many people. And I think your story is really inspiring, and I really enjoyed hearing it. Before we wrap up, though, just out of my own curiosity, I know that being a writer and being a journalist, especially, was something that I wanted to do at one point in one of my lifetimes here.
Hmm.
And I know you're a Forbes contributor. How did that come about? How did you become a contributor?
I'll tell you that, I've always got these big dumb stories, so I'll tell it quickly for you. But when I was doing that startup that I told you about, the one where my wife said she didn't marry a loser, and we were really struggling as a business, I got the idea, hey, if I write for Forbes, that'll help us a ton. And I'm a big fan of writing my goals. Okay, so I write down my goals every single morning, all 5 of my goals. And one of my goals was I write for Forbes. And so this is back in 2013. And so, what do you do when you want to try to be a contributor? You send them. I researched it. I wrote up an article, about 1,000 page or 1,000 word article. And I sent it to Forbes. No response. Okay. So, but every morning I kept writing. I am a Forbes contributor. Right? I just kept drilling it in. Next month, another 1,000 word article. Sent it. No response. Next month, and every day I'm a Forbes contributor. I'm a Forbes contributor. Well, I sent them an article almost every single month from 2013, all in 2014, all in 2015, all in 2016, all in 2017. And then in May of 2018, I sent them an article and they said, hey, we like this article. We'd love for you to come on board. I must have sent them close to 45, maybe 50,000 words. Okay. And no responses. But then in May of 2018, they came back and said, yeah, let's do it. And so I jumped on board, and now I write in the entrepreneurship and leadership and business development space. It's been a great thing for my brand. It's been great for my coaching practice. It's also got me some recognition. They took one of my articles and they featured it. They put it on their podcast. They spoke about it, which got me. That was the one about the 4 C's. They talked a lot about that. And it's led to a lot of different opportunities. But it wasn't because I tried it for a few months. I tried it from 2013 all the way through 2018 until I got in. And so you've
Wow.
got to be persistent. You have to stay at your dreams and your goals if you want to win.
And you have to put in the work, which is exactly what you did. I know it, again, this makes me think of something going on in my own life where I left my job of 10 years. I was given a buyout package and didn't really know where I was going from there. But, excuse me, I had to continue working like a 9 to 5 job, did a lot of contracting. I knew where I wanted to be, but I had to continue applying and applying and applying and applying and applying. Finally, almost 5 years to the day after I left that company that I was at, I wound up getting the exact job or type of job, and certainly with the company that I always wanted to be at. And
Beautiful.
I I can't even count how many jobs I've applied to over the past 5 years, like more than I can count. But as exhausting as it was, and as much as I didn't want to continue applying and applying and applying, I still did it. And eventually I got to where I want to be. And the same thing applies to everything else that I'm doing, the podcast. It's like I'm just working and working and working. And I have my goals and I'm putting in work. So
That's it.
I think the story you just told is just, if you really want something, it's not going to always necessarily fall in your lap and just happen. You have to put in the work. And you are such a great example of that. And
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we had this conversation. I suppose we are running out of time for today. So if you want to go ahead and tell people how they can work with you, how they can find you, other than in Forbes, you can go ahead and let her rip.
Yeah. A lot of people follow me on Instagram, executivecoach.don. Okay. Executivecoach.don. You can follow my content there. But I have, like I mentioned, go to accountabilitynow.net. You can get my ebook, but then I have an online course that is a monthly program where we talk about the 4C's: starting a business, building your leadership profile, building your brand, all those things. And uh, I normally am doing that for $97 a month, but with your podcast, we've discounted it to $7 a month. So anybody can go on there, they can get it. It's cheaper than Netflix and it gives you something better to watch that you can watch a little bit every day and learn accountability for yourself.
Terrific. Well, I think that is a good note to wrap up this episode on. This was Don Markland of Accountability Now, among many other things. Go follow him, go look him up. Amazing, inspiring story and great foundation for building up your business, building up yourself. I think what you're doing is terrific. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on Mark My Words. And speaking of Mark My Words, and speaking of me, if you like this podcast, and hopefully you do, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and give a review. You can find it on iTunes, Google, Audible. I have a YouTube channel. Wherever you can find podcasts, you can find Mark My Words, which since you're listening to it right now.
Yeah, that's right.
You can find me on social media. I still have my personal one. I welcome everybody. I'm at Nimrod79. I also have one for this podcast. It's Mark My Words 6. And I could not get Mark My Words flat out. I guess somebody else who spells their name MARC had that account. So Mark My Words 6 on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at Nimrod1979. I always welcome people to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm a pretty consistent poster. I post all about my journey. I try to post about career transition, entrepreneurship, and just working in general, careers. So come find me on social media. Come find me. I'll be back very soon with another episode. Again, thank you to Don Markland of Accountability Now. I'm Mark Schmidt. Thank you for listening to Mark My Words. Have a good day.
Thanks, Mark.